Hello my wonderful, beautiful friends guys, welcome back to r/IDontWorkHereLady, where Karens mistake customers as employees, and in this episode, a Karen and her husband team up to attack and berate OP, and literally, it's the biggest mistake of their lives. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories today, don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. Alright, so on this day, I was at Walmart looking for wrapping paper for some gifts. I was wearing a navy blue shirt and black jeans. This is important. There I was in the aisle sorting through tubes. There were tubes in the wrong places, and I was moving them back to where they belonged. And that's when enters Karen with her 3 toddlers in tow. The woman comes up to me and says, "Return this item to the shelf." She then proceeds to thrust a computer keyboard into my hands. And I say, sorry ma'am, I don't work here and I don't know where the keyboards are. It was at this point I tried to hand the keyboard back to her, and that's when she swatted my hand away from her. The keyboard then clatters to the ground and everyone else in the aisle just looks at us. The woman then glares at me in my shirt and she looked at me like she just sucked on a lemon and said, "I just watched you stock the wrapping paper and you're wearing a blue shirt, so don't give me that. I've been looking for a worker for 15 minutes to return that for me. And I did not waste all that time to be disrespected by a stupid fat ass." Now this is when I got upset. I don't try to be confrontational, but when you've had 4 hours of sleep and you're listening to a cranky Karen mom yelling at you and insulting you, the irritation is hard to ignore. I say to the woman, "Are you insane? I don't work here, lady. I have no name tag, I have no Walmart logo on my shirt, and I don't know where the effing keyboards are." By this point, someone in the aisle had reported the lady and an actual employee was approaching us. I then picked up the keyboard and tried to hand it back to her one more time, which was a big mistake. As soon as the keyboard touches her hand, Karen screams at the top of her lungs and screamed that I was hitting her with it. She was basically screaming, "He hit me. He hit me with that keyboard. Did you see that?" Of course, my face went bright red, and I turned to the other people in the aisle as they stared at her in disgust. A grown woman was screeching that a 15-year-old beat her with a keyboard. The employee then reached us and helped up Karen, and Karen was screaming, arrest him for assault." The employee just rolled his eyes and said, "Come with me, ma'am." So after that, I got my wrapping paper and walked home. I don't even know what happened to her. I went back to Walmart a few days later and asked an employee about her. The employee told me that she had charges pressed against her for disturbing the peace. And they say keyboard warriors are usually at home on their computers, guys. Who'd have thought that OP would literally encounter one at Walmart? And yes, the 3 toddlers she was with made it so much worse. Like, it's always terrible reading about Karens getting into trouble when they have their kids around. Like, the kids were probably all like, "Mom, grow the F up." And while we're on the topic of Karen screaming about assault, listen to this person's comment. This person says, "This happened when I was 13 years old. Also, I live in a pretty high-end neighborhood, so we have a few entitled nuisances around. On this day, I'm at somewhat a nice cafe with some friends, just about to go see a movie that's coming out. My friends all say they're thirsty, so I offer to grab them some drinks. When I come back with the drinks and set them down, we all enjoy ourselves for about 5 minutes and enter the entitled lady shouting at me. The woman sees me sitting at the table and says, "Hi, you, aren't you supposed to be working? I need service." I tell her, no, what do you mean?" She then says, "Don't play stupid around your friends. I saw you serving your friends right there. Bring me a coffee." I tell her I'm not an employee, but at this point, Karen loses her marbles, and I can tell she doesn't want to take no for an answer, and she starts going absolutely ballistic. The woman says to me, "Listen here, what's with you entitled brats? You're paid to work. I don't care if your friends are here. You're not impressing anyone by treating customers like this." And that's when one friend, being the guy he is, stands up, obviously losing his patience, and he starts taunting her. The lady turns red, and she starts to act if he's assaulting her. The woman starts screaming that our group was attacking her. And note that anyone could tell that we were teenagers. We were like 13, 14 at most. The manager then comes over with 2 employees in tow as the commotion has caused the entire side of the restaurant to turn their attention our way. The manager then proceeds to hear Karen's horror story, how this worker and a madman were attacking her. I could see that the manager knew this was all untrue, as everyone was appalled at the lady. He then informs the woman that she should never make a scene like this in a restaurant again and started chewing her out for it. She then pointed at my friend who was taunting her and she started opening her mouth. The manager then boldly says, "Not a word. Out." We didn't let that ruin our night, and we went on to have the most fun night ever. Ruin the night? Guys, that was probably the highlight of the night. Like, if I was 13 years old again and I was out with my group of friends and we encountered a wild Karen harassing us, like, that would have been the best thing ever. And yes, I may have once upon a time been a loudmouth, bratty teenager. And like John Mulaney says, guys, there's nothing scarier than a group of teenage boys, as 13-year-old boys are the meanest people in the world. And I'm pretty sure Karen learned that on that day. So I work for a large security company that has a contract with the absolute biggest employer in the city. This is where I work security for. I also live in a security-protected apartment complex. And plot twist, it's protected by the same company I work for. My apartment was right next to the clubhouse, and this is where security parked. Also, some background information. The company as a whole uses tan shirts for supervisors and white shirts for officers. But the specific contract for this employer dictated that supervisors wore white shirts and officers wore blue. I'm a supervisor. To top it off, my apartment complex is only a 5-minute drive or a 15-minute walk from where I work. On this particular day, I had just gotten off a 12-hour shift, and I have exactly 8 hours before I had to be back in for another 12-hour shift. I also had to deal with an employee of the company trying to start fistfights and punching me in the face just 20 minutes before my shift ended, so I was on edge. I pulled my car up to the front of the apartment, and being the friendly introvert I am, I waved to the security guard who was looking directly at me and went towards my door. As I was moving through the big key ring to get my key out, my shoulders grabbed and I'm violently spun around. Now, it's worth noting at this point that I haven't been able to settle down from the incident at work, and I put the guy who grabbed me over the railing and on his head. He wasn't injured or anything. It did take him a minute to get up though, as he went a full 180 in under a second. When I realized that it was the security guard of the complex, I walked over and tried to help him up, and he fired at me saying, "You're not allowed in the residence apartments. I'll have you fired for this." Now, I have seen this guy a few times when I went to check the mail, but he seemed to not recognize me. I can fully understand. I see 500 people walk in and out of where I work, and I usually never bother learning names unless 1, I work with you every day, 2, you're one of the big shots who actually can fire me that instant, and 3, you cause trouble frequently. Needless to say, I can understand the lack of recognition. I tell him I don't work here, I live here. The guy screams BS as he got back up on his feet. I know our uniform. You are the new guy that's supposed to be relieving me. The guy then went and grabbed my arm and he tried to show me where the car was. I told him, "Remove your hand from my arm or I will remove it from yours." At this point, I'm done, and I was looking at most 6 hours of sleep, and I'm still in fight mode. The guy's already on the radio calling his supervisor to come deal with me. An hour later, the property manager's coming to open the clubhouse. She stops, smiles, and waves and comes over, and she says, "Hi, I didn't think you'd be out at this time." One thing to know is the property manager and I were pretty cool with each other. She also knew from the inspection yesterday that I was going to be pulling a messed up shift the next few days. Before I can explain anything, the other guard butts in and says, "He was trying to break into a residence apartment. I got my supervisor on the way. He won't be doing it again here." Ladies and gentlemen, I may have turned him upside down, but the property manager, a nice sweet old woman, was about to turn this idiot inside out. Before she could say anything, the officer's supervisor drives up and asks what's going on. She cut the officer off and told him, "This fool is holding one of the residents hostage outside of his apartment. I want him out of this complex 5 minutes ago, and he will not be coming back here, ever." The supervisor just gave the officer a dismissive thumbs back motion. The guy had no leeway to argue. The contractee can always tell who's not allowed on any site, even our own employees, and yeah, he was fired on the spot. And this is not the end, folks. Remember how I said we worked for the same company? Well, the corporate big shots decided to rehire him and send him to the largest employer they guard and give him a second chance. He arrived for an interview at my facility where I had hiring power. The interview went all of 3 questions. Number 1, are you going to keep anyone out that's supposed to be in here? Number 2, are you going to ask for credentials for anyone you don't know trying to enter? And number 3, are you going to grab anyone? He said no, and I accepted him to the facility. He's been working here a year now, and he's one of my best access control officers on site. Even to the point, someone claimed he let someone in that wasn't authorized, and I laughed instantly. I'll be honest, guys, I never expected a wholesome ending to the story, but here we are. And guys, I can only imagine the look on his face when he walked into that interview and saw OP. And good on OP for giving the guy a second chance, like too many people would have shrugged the guy off, especially after that first interaction. So I live way out of town, but I work in town, so I frequently go to stores before or after work, while dressed in my work clothes. Since this saves me a 2-hour round trip to go home and change, this will become important later. With that said, last fall, I was looking for a washing machine. I found a really nice one that was marked down to less than half price. So I find a sales clerk who was helping a man and a lady. And when he looked in my direction, I indicated that I would like to purchase the washing machine when he was finished. The employee nodded, and I went to the washing machine to wait for him, so I could keep first dibs on buying it. That's when I encounter a woman who will be known as Karen with a very obese kid in tow. She comes up to me and asks for help. Now this is not a big deal as it's happened to me before. I smiled and told her that I don't work there. The woman hearing that got irritated. She told me that she couldn't find anyone who worked there, and she wanted me to work there. Again, I tell her, but I don't work here. And that's when she says, but I need help with a dishwasher. I told her I know nothing about their dishwashers, and I don't even own a dishwasher, that she would actually need to ask someone who actually does work here. At that, she glares at me, and she was about to leave when she glances at my shirt and gasped. The woman went quiet for a few seconds, but that was just an intake of air before I was treated to one of those famous Karen screams at full volume in person. She then points to my shirt and says, "What do you mean you don't work here? You do too work here, and I want your help right now. That's enough of your games." I then calmly look at her and say, "Ma'am, this," pointing to the embroidery on my shirt, says name of the grocery store I work at. "You are in a hardware store. I do not work here." But of course, Karen wasn't having any of it, and she let loose at me at full volume, yelling about being a mom and having her kid with her and how I need to stop effing around and help her because she has a kid. The poor kid looked so embarrassed, and I actually felt sorry for him because he has to deal with her nonsense every day. Karen stomped away, yelling about making a complaint, and then for some reason, she turns back around and she came back to glare at me. I told her again that I don't work here, and that she would simply have to find someone who does work here to help her. The woman just kept complaining, and she kept telling her son how he would have to wait since I refused to help her, yelling at me saying how she's a mother and her time is important, and on and on. After a few minutes, she quieted down and she stood between me and the dishwashers glaring at me, and I couldn't resist. I gave her my sweetest smile and said, "Oh, and when that clerk is finished with the people he's helping, I'm next." Hearing me say that, she just glares at me. She then grabs her son by the arm and she stomped off. As soon as he saw Karen was gone, the store clerk quit talking to the other customers, made sure she was out of sight, and then seeing that it was now safe, came over to help me. Okay guys, I just gotta ask, I don't know why Karens think people lie about working at a place. Like, I really want to know, has anyone ever lied about not working somewhere to avoid helping customers? I'd really love to know. So I've read a lot of these stories, but until today, I never thought I would have one that I thought was post-worthy. So the morning started out like normal. I'm at my desk doing work like normal, making money for the company as well as myself, when all of a sudden I hear talking from downstairs, and that's nothing new. Then the talking slowly turns into shouting. I can hear that someone's mad and throwing a tantrum, and that's when I get a page on my office phone. It's my secretary, and she says, "I need you to come down here, please." I ask her, "Is everything okay?" And that's when a voice comes booming through the phone and says, "You need to get your ass down here right now." Now, before going on, I'll have you know that I'm not a small man. I'm 6'2" and a big 345-pound dude. Not muscle, unfortunately. So I come down, see them, and say, "Hi, how can I help you? What seems to be the problem?" The crazy guy didn't see me at first, as he was still death glaring the secretary. And that's when his wife saw me and says, "Your company is full of lazy people. It needs to shape up its act." That's when the husband sees me, steps back, and pulls the wife behind him. At this point, seeing this, I knew he came to my shop for a fight. I used to be a bouncer at a nightclub a long time ago, and I got good at reading people. His posture suggested that he was going to be aggressive. The guy screams at me and says, "What kind of crap show are you running here, huh?" I say to him, "I need to know what's wrong so I can help you. Screaming at me is not gonna make things better." The guy says, "You already know what this is about. I called you already. I told you I was coming down to kick your ass. Did you think I was bluffing? I'm not afraid of you." At this point, I'm very confused, as I've received no calls this morning or yesterday about problem situations. I'm at a loss. I look at my secretary and she's shaking her head and shrugging her shoulder. That's when his wife says, "Oh my goodness, this business is so unprofessional. I'm gonna give this place a bad review." That's when I say, "I still have not heard your reason for being here and what's upsetting you." The guy just looks at me and says, "You know the reason. This is stupid. You did not deliver the trusses for the roof. Your customer service is a joke and I want my money back, all of it. The deposit and the other half, right now." Hearing him say that, I'm even more confused as our company doesn't deal with trusses. I ask him, "Who did you speak to?" His wife says, "I spoke to the guy on the phone. He said that we would get our trusses yesterday." Now, mind you, when she's talking, she's got a finger in my face and she's spitting all over me. Her husband chimes in and says, "Yeah, and they never showed up." So at this point, I'm annoyed that they think we're someone else and they're not listening. I'm getting yelled at and demeaned by two idiots that did not see the giant sign right as they drove in. It's a huge logo. It's like 8 feet tall and 15 feet long. I know, I helped make it. So I ask calmly again, "Are you sure you're where you're supposed to be right now?" The secretary can see my face getting angry and she says, "Don't do it," with a stern look on her face. Karen, hearing that, says, "Do what?" She then gets in my face and says, "What do you think you're gonna do?" And it's at that point she slaps my face. That's when her husband rushes in and says, "Don't you dare touch my wife." He then grabs me and tries to put me through the wall behind me. Mind you, I outweigh this guy by 100 pounds at least. I'm not moving, and at this point, my Fs have just run out. He ripped my shirt pocket. So I grab both of them in a bear hug and I take them outside the office and plant them in the driveway. The secretary's already called the cops. I then turn and point to the giant sign beside our business and say, "Is this where you're supposed to be? Because these guys make trusses." And oh my goodness, their faces literally just dawned on them that they were at the wrong place. The woman walks closer, as if her eyes can't adjust manually, and then she falls on the ground screaming. I turn to go back inside the office and my head is shaking, and this is when the police show up. The guy then claims all sorts of crazy nonsense as well as the woman. That's when I invite everyone to my office and show them the camera feed and the recordings of the whole thing. And they both go away in handcuffs. Their car got towed as well. And yes, me and their secretary did press charges. I ended up talking to the guy next door that they were supposed to be talking to. Come to find out that they were getting the trusses in the morning. But they didn't, as no one was there to receive the trusses. The funny thing is, the husband and wife sent the contractor home to come deal with this. And as the job isn't finished now, the contractor can't get paid. The job is not finished. The house is open, the trusses are sitting on the ground, and the owners are in jail. When it rains, it pours. My goodness, guys, what a mistake on their part, and they definitely deserve jail time. Like, what kind of psychos show up to a place looking to beat someone up over a delivery? And it does terrify me that there are full-grown adults like this in the world. And this person's comment sums it up. This person says, "Wow, what a pair of morons. They're not just stupid, they're weaponized stupid." For some context, this story took place 3 days before Christmas. I was shopping for some sweet, sugary sweets. The cast for this story is me, the entitled woman Karen, and Carl, the store manager. It was 3 minutes past opening, and I was one of the first customers in the store. So I figured I'd be able to get in, get my purchases, and get out before any self-entitled Karens walked in. Unfortunately, that was not meant to be. 3 minutes after I walked in, the bitch walks in, and Karen grabs me and says, "Excuse me, I need your help. You should be helping customers with their shopping." I attempt to brush her hand away and say, "I do not work here, ma'am. I'm trying to get some shopping done. I, like you, am a customer." Now here's an important note. Dollar General employees wear a black polo shirt with the company logo on them, along with a yellow name tag, black or khaki dress slacks, and tennis shoes. I was wearing a hoodie with my high school name on it, pajama bottoms, and tennis shoes, so nothing like an employee. Karen spins me around and says, "I need your help. Stop touching the product and do your job. Customers come first." At this point, I'm getting pissed and say, "I don't work here. I'm a customer like you. I'm not wearing their uniform." Karen refuses to believe me and says, "You are lying. You're covering your uniform so you can ignore customers that pay your wage." I then take off my hooded sweatshirt to reveal a white Cleveland Cavaliers jersey. I show off the jersey and say, "Do I look like I'm wearing the uniform? Even if I did work here, I would not assist you on my day off. And if I was on the clock, I would not help you after you treated me like garbage." Of course, Karen's obviously insulted, and she says, "I'm gonna get your manager and have him fire you for refusing to help a customer." She then walks away, so I begin to grab my purchases in earnest. 5 minutes later, she walked back and she had Carl in tow. An important note is Carl is a friend of mine. We've known each other since I was 5 and he was 8. Karen says to Carl, "This employee refused to help me. He would rather buy his diabetes-inducing treats than help a loyal customer." Carl says to Karen, "I've known OP for 31 years. He's never been rude to anyone. You, on the other hand, I've never seen before. OP is not an employee here, and unlike you, he's a regular customer. You need to leave right now." Karen refuses to leave. She turns to start shopping some more, and she says, "I'll just leave him alone and buy what I came for. And if you want to keep your job, you will let me buy what I need to buy. This store is the only store that has this product." Carl then grabs his cell phone and says, "I said leave," and starts dialing for the police. But Karen left, I finished shopping, and I went home with a case of Dr. Pepper, 2 boxes of Twinkies, 3 personal-sized cups of Toll House ice cream, and 3 bags of Hershey's assorted miniatures. Karen ended up, because of her attitude, not getting what she was shopping for. Thank you, Carl. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /IDontWorkHereLady. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitled People episode, where Karen won't stop trespassing to steal from a neighbor, and this story is hilarious. Go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.